this guy's brain is just full of fucking memes. I can't believe he did the socialist, Marxist, communist liberals. Like, this seems like a parody of a comment that would have been written genuinely 10 years ago.
Are you on? Which side are you on?
Folks, you are still listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. I am joined by Alex Edward from Minion Death Cult. Alex, welcome to the program. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. You know, I just finished pre-taping an interview with another Alex, Alex Press from Jacobin. We were talking about the year in review. So 2 Alexes in a row.
Yeah.
People won't be hearing it as 2 Alexes in a row, but that's how I'm experiencing it. So what they do over on Minion Death Cult, I think folks kind of have the idea. You've been on the program before, but you take a look at the news through Mima's Facebook comments, and I think that's a very fun concept. So what we did is I pulled some of the funnier comments from our YouTube page, and we're going to react to them, and we've got some all-timers here, and we'll start with this one from when we covered the Act 10 being overturned in Wisconsin. Act 10, for those of you who don't know, was a very kind of generally all-encompassing anti-public sector union law in Wisconsin, and it like took away collective bargaining rights, made pay go down. It was just really, really bad for like teachers and public sector workers generally in Wisconsin. And that law has been overturned now. So we talked about that, very excited about it. And we had some comments. Bob CX4ZE said, public sector union, quote unquote, is just a fancy way of saying legalized extortion, quote unquote. So I guess, Alex, what do you make of that legalized extortion?
Yeah, it's kind of, when you hear about like legalized extortion through, because I've been a Teamster for 18 years. When you hear about legalized extortion in the realm of unions or whatever, it's usually like, oh, they're extorting the union dues out of the members. And I have no choice in withholding my union. That's why we need right to work laws or whatever. But I think this seems to be saying that because there are workers within the government, that's robbery. I think this is like a taxation is theft argument. It really seems like that, but he's just, he knows that people have already heard the phrase taxation is theft. So he wants to maybe elevate it a little bit and bring it up to, legalized extortion or whatever. This is, of course, like more histrionics from the anti-labor right. It's funny because, like it also reminds me of this sort of like, not Ayn Rand, Rand Paul argument about how you can't have public health care because that would imply that you're forcing doctors to work.
Right.
Which is also a very confusing argument. It's like, well, there's got to be people doing stuff in government. You're just anti-government. Just say you're anti-government. Like I don't know. It seems like a long way to beat around the bush.
Yeah, and the folks who say that like the doctor would be a slave in the situation that we have public health care, I never hear them address just for one, like you don't have to be a doctor. You could be literally anything else. So like nobody is.
No, Stalin himself is gonna fucking rap on your door with an AK-47 and get her a surgical suite now.
Yeah. But like also all of these people support, although in a very degraded and not good way, like the system of public defense. Like none of these people would say that we should, or generally maybe Rand Paul would, but most people support the idea that you have a right to a trial, to a fair trial with a jury of your peers. And this all requires the labor of others, right? It requires a judge. It requires a public defender. It requires 12 people to be on a jury and all of this kind of, and so like everybody who's ever served on a jury, does that mean you're a slave? Does it mean you're a slave if you're a public defender? Like what's the, it's not a very robust argument. It doesn't seem.
I think I think a lot of these people would argue that, yes, police officers are slaves. They're beholden to the woke plantation. They're forced to never use their firearms and never kill unarmed, defenseless people, which they should be allowed to do that, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I responded because in basically the same level of rigor that this person responded. Like, he just asserted public sector unionism is legalized extortion. And I also think that part of that was like when people say that public sector shouldn't be able to unionize, it's part of it is they have ostensibly a problem with us as public sector employees bargaining against the taxpayer, right? I think that's part of it, that we're extorting the taxpayer for more money. But, none of the argument was laid out. It was just an assertion. And so I just asserted back. I said, no, it's not. And you're a dumbass. And
you can't even sorry, real quick, as a public sector union member, respect. My dad is a public sector union member. Respect to you. Also, you're the most whipped union members in the country. Like you can't even fucking strike, Like, look at what the post office is going through right now. If you're looking to make an argument against how strong unions are, the public sector is not the way to do it.
Exactly. And so, I said, no, it's not, and you're a dumbass. And then Mr. Blue Man 999 here took offense to that. And he said, dude, when the only comment on your video is disagreeing with you and your only response is to insult them, it doesn't make you look smart or believable. When the only thing you can do is insult someone, then you've already lost the argument. Also, I don't really know how I feel about unions, but every union worker I've worked with are just the most useless people I've ever met, always pushing the work onto other people. I had to quit a job because of a single union guy making everybody's life harder. Now, there's this guy has a lot of trauma that he needs to go to a therapist about, right? But the first part, the idea that I have to take time out of my day to write an essay every time somebody disagrees with me on my YouTube channel, I'm sorry, that's not the way that it works. We're live, and I encourage people to call in when we're live, 844-899-TVLR. I love getting into arguments, but also I have a fucking job, right? I've got a job, and I have to work. And so I'm sorry, I can't write an essay every time somebody says dumb bullshit,
I just think as a professional radio broadcaster, you should know that sort of getting into arguments with people, it's not a good look. All right. You disagreeing, calling people names. This type of stuff is never entertaining. This type of stuff is never successful for a radio program or YouTube channel. Yes. I mean, sorry, Mr. Blue Man, the algorithm says we have to respond to every comment in order to send viewers our way. So blame the system once again, Mr. Blue Man.
There you go. And now the last line here I thought was fascinating. I had to quit a job because of a single union guy making everybody's life harder. Like, what was the dynamic in that workplace, I wonder? Because was the workplace unionized and there was somebody that he felt like was taking advantage of it? Or was this a non-union workplace and there's just this one guy paying dues to the IWW or something that was like...
I love the idea. I love this folk tale, this fucking Randian horror gothic tale about a single union guy haunting the job site and they couldn't get any work done. This guy was so lazy, he made all of us worse. He radiated union union ethos into all of us and made the job impossible. Yeah, he sounds like a cool guy. I'm gonna be honest. We're all working here, and this guy gets paid probably twice as much as we do to apparently do no work. I mean, it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, he's somehow been able to negotiate a union contract for himself. That he is a one-person bargaining unit, and he's got it in his contract. I get paid twice the rate of these non-union schmucks, and I don't have to work, and also I get to smack the boss on the face when I come into the door.
Yeah, that's in the contract. And I love, look up, if you worked in the same industry where there are unionized workers, it seems like there's a chance you're making prevailing wage. You're making what you're making because of the existence of a union. Right. For anybody who doesn't know, look up prevailing wage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I mean, just recently we saw with the Boeing stuff where the folks in the Pacific Northwest, they went on strike and they got the raise up to like 40% over 4 years from the first offer was like 25%. And it was actually effectively more like 12%, according to some of the people that I talked to, because the initial offer of 25% removed the annual bonus, which was something like 1 to 4% every year. And so
companies love contract time because they love coming up with ways they can like try to humiliate you.
Yes.
They love coming up with weird ways where it's like you have to dig for the disrespect and you're like, what?
Right.
Why did you guys do this?
Yeah, exactly. And so they got a 40% raise. They got it was like a 10 or 12% raise on the first year. And Boeing South Carolina facility, Boeing just announced they're going to give a 9% raise to plus a $12,000 retention bonus to these people, these non-union workers in South Carolina. And I'm just going to tell you, it's not a coincidence that happened immediately after the Boeing contract was won in the Pacific Northwest. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah, every time UPS has a new contract, FedEx workers get a raise. That's just the way it works. And a rising tide, an actual rising tide for workers does lift. It doesn't have to trickle down. That's the thing is like, I don't want to sidetrack it too much, but I had an interesting post in one of my UPS Facebook groups where somebody said, admit it, you only want Amazon to join the Teamsters so they can help boost your pension. And I was like, how is this a gotcha? Like, of course we want more members to boost the pension because it'll also boost their pension. That's not a gotcha. And that's the great thing about class politics is for the class, it's benefit. You're self-interested. You're acting on sure, my self-interest coincides with these other workers or whatever, but I'm actually getting something out of it. It's something that motivates me to do better, not just altruism. It's not just think of your coworker, think of the other workers. It's also, I'm going to fucking get something for this. Right. And that's the great thing about I don't have to be shameful about being like, yes, unionizing Amazon will help me. That's good. It'll help all of us. That's the idea of a union.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another extortion comment on the same one. This person, Rando Muser 3555, said, whenever I hear of any union having troubles, I think of the longshoreman and the soprano-like boss that used mafia tactics to extort the U.S. economy. Striking is not a mafia tactic. A mafia tactic would be assassinating the CEO of the ocean carrying companies or something. That would be like if we wanted to organize like a mafia, that would be like a mafia thing to do. Striking and withholding your labor is not a mafia thing. He literally bragged he had the U.S. economy by the balls. That's because their labor is valuable, right? Yeah. It's really hard
because they are the economy. They're running the economy right there.
Exactly. It's really hard to sympathize with a union after that. Also, I work in the trucking industry, and the Teamsters are the bane of my existence. They just are terrible. Also, feel free to insult or delete this. I've said my piece. Merry Christmas. I love the people that think that, that I care enough to delete their comments when it's not anything it's just stupid, but it's not bigoted or anything like that. It's just why would I care enough to delete your very silly comment?
Because it's too powerful. Can't let other people see this and be swayed.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing that workers recognize that they run the economy. They are the economy. Without workers, the economy doesn't run. And us leveraging that power is not a bad thing.
It's just the only way to do it. Ascribing morals to it, we get there is moral benefits to having a union. I think there's a moral what do you call it, angle to having a nice life and having a home and having stability and healthcare and all that. There's absolutely a moral argument to be made. But we live in a capitalist system, and if this is the way the companies are going to treat the rest of it, not just workers, but the consumer, every citizen, then we also have the right to use that system in the way that we can, which is by flexing on the bosses. And like, it's just an argument. It comes down to who has more power. It comes down to who's going to win. It comes down to who is going to side with whom. And I think labor has a very good argument for all of those. And it's just, it's just the real politic of it. Like, sorry that workers aren't going to be like, oh, shucks, yeah, it would be mean to hold the boss's feet to the fire, so I guess I'm not going to get a raise for the 5th year in a row. Like, that's not going to happen. People aren't like that.
Yeah, exactly. So here's a different one, and this has been going around, and this has been particularly frustrating for me as a federal employee union member. The stuff that like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and now Joni Ernst are trying to get in and talk about, and that's where this guy Mark CM4HY, these are some of the most crazy usernames. I don't understand why people would, but anyway, Mark CM.
I think what it is, this is like what YouTube generates. If you don't have an idea for a username, you give them your first name and then they generate a string of characters after it. I think it's like what Twitter used to do as well. That's like the meme. Hey, Mark, bunch of numbers. Let's hear your fucking totally valid opinion.
I see. Okay. So this guy said, let's talk about, and he's responding on a video where I'm responding to his argument. Like I literally, I spent 40 minutes breaking down what Vivek was saying and pointing to why it's not correct. And literally, I talked about the exact statistic that he's about to bring up. And it's just so frustrating. So he says, let's talk about federal employees, of which only 6% bother to show up for work. How ridiculous. I talked about that in the video. And
have you thought about how this guy's seen that meme more than once? I think you might have to address it more than once to our satisfaction.
Yeah, exactly. But like and one of the things that I said in the video is that if you can hear the statistic that 6% only 6% of all federal employees are at work in person every single day. Like, if you can hear that and not be like, that's got to for sure be bullshit. That can't be true, right? Like, that has to be the first thought that you have if you are not living in cuckoo land. Because federal employees, VA workers, people who work at the commissary, federal wildland firefighters, Bureau of Prison Guards, right? There's all sorts of folks like that all across the country. And my union, AFGE, has gone into this, and these agencies have to report telework data to the federal government. So we have like super, super detailed data about who is teleworking. 54% of all federal workers are always in person every day because they literally can't do their jobs from home, like a VA nurse or something, right? They can't do their jobs from home.
How is a prison guard going to smuggle in drugs to his prison over Zoom?
Exactly. You just can't do that. And so
it's also like telework. You're still fucking doing a job. I don't know. Right. Like, I don't know what real estate company you work for, Mark, bunch of letters, but like, just, I don't know. People know that, like, if you're doing a job on the computer, you could fucking do that job at home. Like, nobody else has this weird, like seemingly religious, like it is like a Protestant mindset thing. You have to go into work in order to do work. And I mean, just on the face of it, it's such an absurd argument because, Vivek and Elon, they're talking about how they're going to save money by forcing everybody to go into, fluorescently lit buildings that have to be maintained. Like nobody actually believes that's going to save money because any credible study shows that working from home saves the company money. And this is an argument that I've made a couple times on our show. If we were a proper fucking nation, we could argue that working from home is actually a benefit to the employer, and we should therefore be compensated part of my mortgage or part of my rent that I have to dedicate to work. You know what I'm saying? But we can't even have that discussion because these people are so are so twisted, their brains are so fucked up, excuse me, are so messed up, that this is what we're left arguing against.
Yeah, it is so it's so frustrating, and I've been listening to as a federal employee and talking about this on the radio. I have listened to half a dozen congressional hearings about telework, and I have been expecting at least one congressperson to have one statistic about one agency that they have been able to twist into showing that somehow federal workers are less productive at home, or there's like less mission success at home or something like that. I've expected, like, sure, because there must be somewhere, there must be some department in the federal government. There has to be, just like statistically, there must be somewhere, some department at some agency that for whatever reason the people have been less productive at home. It has to exist somewhere, and yet they have spent so many hours just in these hearings, much less the prep for it, and they haven't brought a single one iota of evidence of this. They're just pointing to like, oh, they're not in the office. Well, point to me that they're not being productive, and then maybe we can have a conversation. But I have genuinely been shocked. Every time they do one of these, I'm expecting that there's something going to be there, and there's not. And it's amazing how they can go on this diatribe about it with zero evidence.
Yeah, it's just part and parcel with like the right's outlook on humanity, which is extraordinarily pessimistic and obviously anti-worker, but like pessimistic about humanity in general. And to them, they don't have to have statistics. It just, the argument makes sense because people are lazy. Everybody who's not me is lazy and a liar and will try to get out of, doing a good job for their boss if they can. So obviously these people are being less productive.
So then he says, you guys are a couple socialist, Marxist, communist liberals, which is fun. Why don't you go out and get a real job like everyone else? We have a real job, instead of living in your parents' basements. Actually, we have multiple jobs. Actually, my co-host Adam, both works for Alabama Arise, and then he's also a union stagehand. And then we do a radio show. So yeah. How many jobs do you have, Mark CM4HY? Probably only one, because you're lazy.
That's why this guy asked you to address the meme that you've already addressed in the video, is because this guy's brain is just full of fucking memes. I can't believe he did the socialist, Marxist, communist liberals. Like this seems like this seems like a parody of a comment that would have been written genuinely 10 years ago.
Right.
Right. Mommy's basement. That's a meme. Playing Call of Duty. Is that game still around? That's a meme. Hot Pockets and Coke for dinner. These are all like, he didn't say chicken tendies even, like incredible.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. So I also called this guy a dumbass. Told him if you watch the video, you'd see that we addressed the claim, citing. Oh, and this 6% number, by the way, just so that you can know, the 6% number that Joni Ernst is going around in what she's calling her report. That number comes from an online voluntary poll that you
got to answer if you read all the way through a Daily Wire article.
At the end of an online news website about the federal government, about work in, what are the agencies doing with their employees? What's kind of like a business magazine, but about the federal government. And it's only online, called Fed News Now or something like that. And so look, obviously VA nurses and people like that can read Fed News Now, but probably they're not going to be as likely to read fednewsnow.com as somebody who does have a desk job and is reading about telework. And so this was a telework poll that fednewsnow.com did, and only 6% of respondents to this online poll that was not scientific. It was not, it was not randomly selected people. It was just anybody who read this one article could respond to that poll. 6% of people that responded to that poll had jobs where they came into the office every single day. but obviously that is not representative. And they say it's not representative.
Yeah.
The Office of Management and Budget has the representative thing, and they say 54% of all federal workers are not even eligible for telework. Of the 45% that are eligible for it, only 10% are remote, and the remaining portion that are eligible for it and do a hybrid kind of thing, they work 64% of their hours in the office. So even among people that can telework, 60% of the hours are done in the office. So I don't know. It's crazy.
I get it. I'm jealous too. I would like to work from home. That seems like I have a job such that I can't do that. I'm happy with my job, so I'm not going to change my career or anything like that. But yeah, I would love to do that. But you don't have to like be angry about it. Like you can be happy for somebody else getting to work from home. The poll respondent thing reminds me of, I think when we were talking about, we were talking about maybe the O'Brien, the possible O'Brien endorsement of Trump, the possible Teamsters endorsement of Trump. I think we talked about that. And you asked me if I had ever been polled as to who I preferred for president, leading up to that supposed endorsement or whatever. And I was like, I don't remember getting a card in the mail or anything like that or voting. It was in Teamsters magazine. There was a QRC code that you could scan. I only voted because somebody sent me the link, like from TDU or something like that.
Right.
The only way to vote was you had to scan a QRC code in the magazine or be part of an online group that shared this out with everybody. And so that's why if you look at the endorsement polls from the locals where they had town halls and brought the active member, people who normally go to their fucking union halls to participate in meetings and stuff, went for the Democrats, whereas the people who just, are purely online individuals, possibly very deranged, went for Trump. And so that's why, like, when they were releasing these results of who the Teamsters voted for or whatever, I was just like, this isn't even enough to like release. Like, why would you even release this shit? Because it was like, I can't remember how many percent of people actually voted in that poll, but it was very low. It was very low, like maybe even the single digits.
Yeah. So yeah, I said, hey, dumbass, I responded to this, watched the video, and then he said, ad hominem is a logical fallacy that occurs when someone attacks a person.
Fell right into his trap.
It's like, no, even if it is an ad hominem, the idea that this guy who's calling me entitled says I'm a socialist, Marxist, communist, liberal, saying that I live in my parents' basement and all this, like, you started the ad hominem. Like,
yeah. And you already did a whole debate thing in the video. So you got that part out of the way. Now you get to just engage in ad hominem. It's fine to do ad hominem if you already did the argument or whatever. Ad hominem is just fun,
Exactly. And if he wanted to respond, he could have. Like, if you wanted to respond to the argument, you could have, but he just responded to the argument that I already dealt with in the video. You were talking about the endorsement thing, and there was this one comment that I don't really have much to say about, but I just thought it was interesting. I did a video about what does the election mean for the Nippon U.S. Steel deal. U.S. Steel, longtime steel manufacturer in the United States. Nippon is a Japanese steel manufacturer that are wanting to buy U.S. Steel. Most politicians are against it. Biden is against it, and it looks like it's going to fail, in part because of that. Trump also against it. And so we talked about that. And this guy, Steven Torres, NYCCA, said voting for Democrats was a fumbled move. And that's just, I'm curious, like, from which timeline is he commenting? Like, is he commenting from the timeline where Kamala Harris is president-elect? Or, like, what is he even trying to say here? Do you have any?
Yeah, where's this comment? Sorry.
This is the last one. Voting Dem is a fumble. He said voting for Democrats was a fumbled move.
Yeah, I don't know. He probably thinks like he hates unions so much. He isn't aware of the right-wing meme that the unions have shifted right and are now Republicans through and through. Like, I think he's like got his wires crossed or something like that. because there's like a lot of reporting about how, is labor going to move right? And like, oh, look at Josh Hawley. And you guys cover this stuff all the time, of course.
Right.
And like, wow, Trump and JD Vance, the most pro-labor Republic. I mean, fucking, this is what Sean O'Brien said when he went to the RNC. Like that's the meme right now. And I think this guy is like not content to take the W with the overarching media narrative, and still has to be a little weenie contrarian crybaby against something that nobody is even really talking about.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I think if you do look at exit surveys, majority of union members voted for Democrats. Over 50% of union members did vote for Democrats, including like if you had a union member in your household, you were also more likely to vote for Democrats. So that is what I use to push back against the idea that supposedly the unions are totally captured by the right wing now, yada, yada, yada. But that's been totally ignored. That's not part of the narrative that Democrats still are voting, or sorry, that union members still are voting for Democrats.
Right. So there's a few more. We talked about a similar comment, I think, last time you were on, or one of the times that we've had you on, but it's come up again. The trying to buy stocks as a way to change the company. So I don't know if you've developed any more jokes about this one, but this guy is responding to a comment that I on a video or is commenting on a video about Amazon worker organizing that we did, and so this guy's name is Darius318, and he said one thing I never understood is if the company cares more about satisfying stockholders than employees, why don't the employees buy up a lot of stock and demand as shareholders to pay employees more? And so have you been able to develop any foolproof responses to this one yet?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to show them how much stock millionaires own in the company, how much stock like the company itself owns in the company. I don't know. Yeah, I had a guy say something like we were talking about erosion of UPS's services and how we're doing things in the company that do not benefit the customer, let alone the employee, but stuff that just does not benefit the customer, that actually harms the customer. For instance, like I don't want to highlight this because, again, like my personal success is tied to the company's success. And I want the company to do well, but like us closing our customer counters across the country, a very anti-customer move. Very like that is going to result in a lot of pissed off people when they can't just come down to the building and get their package because of because mistakes happen. Package gets on the wrong truck. It doesn't go out. They need it tonight, yada, yada, yada. Well, now you got to wait for us to send it to like a third party UPS store or whatever. That's going to become the new customer counter. And so just these issues come up in these Facebook groups, and I see them, and the common response is, well, the company runs at the behest of the shareholders now. That's who we're trying to appease. We're not worried about appeasing the customer. And this has been a meme since the company went public. Like UPS has not always been a publicly traded company. And that's been the meme even from the old timers. They're like, this company fucking went downhill the second we started answering to shareholders. Yada, the founder would be rolling in his grave, yada, yada, yada. These are like common sentiments within the workforce. And, I said something to that effect. Well, when a company's run to benefit the shareholders, like stuff like this that seemingly doesn't make sense is what you get. And then, somebody responded, well, have you ever thought about becoming a shareholder? And it's like, yeah, do you know how any of this works? Do you think they do a roll call where everybody who owns like a single share in the company, you get to vote. It's drowned out by the people who have tens. Have you seen that episode of Futurama? Like there's episodes of TV that explain to you how insignificant your fucking several shares of a company are compared to the people who actually own 30% of your company, like fucking Warren Buffett. Why don't you just go outvote Warren Buffett with your dollar, genius?
Well, I hear you, But have you ever considered that you can buy partial shares and that partial shares add up?
They add to a whole share. Wow, that's true. I never thought about that.
Okay.
Partial shares add up. Yeah, that's what Darius. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can't deny that. And if you call him an idiot or something, he's going to hit you with that ad hominem. So you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, yeah. I've got to write an essay responding to it, explaining everything. Otherwise, I'm not engaging in good faith.
It's just like, you know how rich people control everything. Like, come on, like
Why
meet
don't
me
you
in the
just be
middle.
rich?
But it's just like, you, even as this weird, like, contrarian guy, you know that rich people control everything. You know it. You've made up excuses about, well, they're just the rich people that have friends, and they have friends in the government, and that's why they're powerful. Other rich people who don't have friends in the government aren't as powerful or whatever. Like, you've made up all these little carve outs or whatever, but you have to admit, money is power. You have to admit, at the very fucking least, that money is power in this country. Do you not see how somebody with an exponential more amount of it might have more of a say in the company, you know?
Well, partial shares add up, though, Alex. So I don't know what else. I don't know what's not getting through to you there on that one.
I mean, in Office Space, they had partial pennies that added up to thousands and thousands of dollars in that scam they were trying to pull.
There you go. Maybe we could do something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that we responded to this one or to a sentiment like this last time we've had you on, but this is also a very, very common one. Chiding unions about being political, saying that unions shouldn't be political. This one was a comment that was left on a video where we were relaying some of the labor movement's reaction to Bernie Sanders' arms blockade being voted down in the Senate. Bernie Sanders put forward a resolution to block arms sales to Israel because of what's going on in Gaza. And folks who listen to the show know that, the labor movement has all but unanimously called for a ceasefire in Gaza, and unions representing approximately half of the labor movement have called for an arms embargo at this point, because of what's going on. And so this guy left a comment saying that unions should stop trying to be political animals and, support the union workers you are being paid to support. I have thoughts about that, but Alex, I guess what are your initial reactions to people saying that we should not be engaging in politics?
Yeah, I mean, that's another, like, really successful campaign that the right wing has done to say that let's not make economics political, guys. That's been incredibly successful. Like, politics is not how much I get paid at work, or how long my life is, or what quality of life it is going to be, or any of these actual important things. Politics is what race the actors are in the commercial for Dove soap. That's what real, and so that part of it is to be expected. Unions stop trying to be political or whatever. You can maybe have a fruitful conversation with somebody who does say these memes or does say these right-wing ideas. You could be like, actually, these are pretty political fights that we're having, and this is like the one arena where we could actually win them. You could have that argument that would be, I think, good. But then the idea that by supporting an arms embargo, you're not supporting the union members or whatever, I can see that being a thornier argument to try and have with somebody who's maybe not sympathetic with Gaza, not even pro-Israel, just doesn't give a fuck about anything that's not them or the country or whatever. And I would just fall back to my old argument that, it's a class argument. Like, even if you don't think it's going to, helping people in Gaza is going to help you, it will. Like, you should want to help people because it's the right thing to do, but you should also want to help the people of Gaza so they're not, having weapons of war and domestic suppression tested on them for the last 30 years that will then be used against you the next time you try to go on strike for your rights. You know, these struggles are absolutely interconnected, and some of them do take a little bit of extrapolation to try and connect, but the connection is there.
For sure. And, you know, somebody like the idea that war is not a working class issue is just such a kind of silly thing. You know, I mean, what is happening right now is that the tax dollars of the public money that is, you know, owned by working people ostensibly, you know, I mean, we're supposed to be the owners of our government, is going to buy weapons that will be used by people that would be working class in Israel that are conscripted to use on working class people in Palestine. And like the idea that the organized voice of the working class in America should not have a say in that is just so asinine. It just is not. It is not a sensical thing to believe. And like you said, I think that's a really important point to make, that the kind of the narrowing of politics into something that is not meaningful,
it's
and
just
the
aesthetic
separation,
or cultural. Yeah,
exactly. It is so harmful, and it is important to kind of widen people's understanding of what politics are, because your politics are what your wage is, and also and because that's connected, you know, politics is connected to everything else, like your wage and stuff like that. The organizations of working people are political entities, and so we have a right to speak on behalf of our members. And so, you know, unions, the half of the labor movement has members that are agitating for for a ceasefire in Gaza. And so why would our unions not be vocal about that when that's what their members are asking for?
Yeah, and I think maybe even I was being a bit pessimistic when I'm talking about like the tenuous connection between a worker in America or a worker in Gaza. Mm-hmm. Like, that's I guess like the Marxist argument for it or whatever. But you touched on, I think, an even more salient argument, which is just we don't want our money going to fucking war. We don't want our money going to further a conquest for another country to get land over. Like, even if I vaguely like that country, I don't like them enough to fund a fucking, full scale attack and expansion of borders or whatever. Like that seems bad. It seems like it's bad for the area, probably going to blow back on us, not going to be great. That's an easy argument to make.
Exactly. And it's also an argument that at this point, the Israeli labor movement is making now. I mean, the Israeli labor movement did a whole general strike trying to get the government to agree to a ceasefire, right? And
didn't try very hard.
Yeah, their reasons for it are a little bit different. You know, it's not, unfortunately, at this point, it's not about sympathy for Palestinians and that it's bad to kill Palestinians. It's that they want to bring the hostages home, and the Israeli labor movement has recognized at this point that the Netanyahu government does not actually care about the hostages. They care about, inflicting pain on Palestinians in Gaza and, at this point, the West Bank. But even though there is genuinely, I mean, we were talking about like racism and kind of reactionary politics in America. It's even worse in Israel. But they care about the Israeli hostages. Like they genuinely give a shit about that. And they've recognized that the Netanyahu government does not. And so they've broken with the Netanyahu government on the war. And so they say we need a ceasefire so that we can this is the only way that these people are going to return home alive. And I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's the Netanyahu government traded the idea of regaining those hostages with free real estate. Right. Free real estate in Syria, free real estate in Lebanon, the West Bank, Gaza, all that. They're getting what they wanted out of it. It doesn't. Exactly. Who cares about your hostages? Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've got a couple others, but I think that we've hit the big ones. So I appreciate it.
Next time.
And I enjoy this. I think that we'll probably have you on at least once next year to do it again, and I'll try to be saving up some of the best comments for you. I'll try to have a good stock for you next time we bring you on.
Oh, please, thanks. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Let's do it again.
All right. Alexander Edward from Minion Death Cult, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We'll see you around. Where can folks find you and talk about your podcast and your new one with your wife? I plugged it last time, but I enjoy that one too. So talk to us about it.
Thanks. Yeah, the new one with the wife is a little more wholesome. It's me investigating her secretive and furtive behavior in her browser tabs, finding out what evil magics she is learning about the world to potentially use against me. There's 5 episodes of that on her various activities. She's a very interesting woman. Very, very, very intriguing. Recommend. That's called Close Other Tabs with Ani and Alex. And then, Minion Death Cult. Every week we go over the news, how it resonates with real Americans, by which I mean, the comment sections of Facebook and Fox News and across the web. And you can get it at miniondeathcult.com or wherever you get podcasts.
All right. There you go. Thank you so much, Alex. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.